Walai, wizor walai. This on? Okay. Good evening. My name is Chanda Vitale. I'll be your director of ceremonies tonight and also the moderator. Remember, we ladies are the queens of multitasking, so I'll prove that tonight. As is customary at Buang, we have to start with a prayer. Therefore, I'll ask for a volunteer to pray. Any volunteer? Let us pray. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Father, we come before your throne this evening. We want to thank you, Father, for your blessings you have given us this day, and we are able to achieve what we achieved. It was not by our might, but because of your grace that is sufficient for all of us. We are meeting this evening, Father, to share, and we ask for your guidance and wisdom in all that will be discussed today, so that we carry it forward in our lives. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Thank you, Mama Resi. At this point in time, I'll call on the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Finance and Administration, a lady of course, Mrs. Rebecca Mgal, to come and give us the welcome remarks.
Good evening. As a custom here, after prayer, we talk safety. So I would like to take this opportunity to say to yourself that you are safe here, and our safety rooms, some of them are on our right. The VIP ones are somewhere along the corridor. So, good evening once more, ladies and gentlemen. My role is to welcome you to Buang. In doing so, let me first recognize the Vice Chancellor, the father of the house, VIPs here tonight, all invited guests, colleagues, and students who are here tonight to grace this occasion. My role has been further extended to welcoming you to the launch of the Women in Agriculture and Natural Resources public lecture and panel discussions. As you can see, we are here surrounded by a very powerful women. We are very eager to hear what they are going to share with us. These are the leaders, the guinea pigs in this series of lectures that you are going to have. The history of education of women in partial societies is littered with stories of the girl child being denied education or being channeled towards caring professions. This was, however, on the stereotype that women's role was to care for their families and communities. However, governments and the leadership around the world started to realize that the absence of women in science-based professions was doing a disservice to their economies, and as such started encouraging women and girls to pursue careers in these areas. As you can see, we are displaying women who have ventured in those careers tonight. Buan, as the University of Agriculture and Natural Resources, has a two-pronged challenge of firstly, being in a field where women have always participated at a subsistence production level and hardly transitioned to a commercial production level. Being the science-based field where women are very few, just to give you a perspective, when you look at the population of academic staff here in the university, we have a total of 295. Out of that 295, 129 are men. Scientists also use calculators, but if they can subtract, I think it will leave us with 66 for women. Buan Management, therefore, through the launch of this series, has decided to turn the tide and pivot women to a position of prominence. It is therefore my distinct honor to welcome you all to this historic event and invite you to also participate in future panel discussions in this series. My last role, ladies and gentlemen, is to introduce guests here tonight. Once more, let me first acknowledge the Vice Chancellor, Father of the House. May I also recognize the CEO of BITRI, Prof. Shiren Mashpe, who is about to arrive. I'm told that he was coming from Radicelle today. I have a distinct pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome our guest of honor, Senior Assistant Commissioner, Dr. Babuluki Helen Tumediso. Let me also introduce to you our Acting Deputy Vice Chancellor, our Acting Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic Affairs and Research, Professor Samudimo Waku. Our distinct panelists shall be introduced to you, but I would like also to recognize them. We salute you, powerful women. I wish you a very interactive engagement this evening, and I thank you.
Thank you, DVC. At this point in time, I have to call to the podium, but before I call to the podium, you know, as Mam G was talking, we call her Mam G. I was reminded of a song from I'm a 90s child. I was a teenager in the 90s. You can do the maths. You're a scientist. So there was a group called, I think it was Eurythmics, and they had a song called Sisters Are Doing It For Themselves. And it's today, sisters are doing it for themselves. So, with that said, I would like to call, because this is such a special occasion, it required somebody to come and launch it. So, I would like to introduce to you our guest speaker for tonight, the one who is going to launch this event for us. Her name is, I have to read first, you have to hear who she is. When I say sisters are doing it for themselves. Dr. Babuluki Helen Tumediso is a Senior Assistant Commissioner of Police. She is the Director of Botswana Police Forensic Science Services. Did you hear that? Yes. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Botswana a Master of Science in Forensic Science from the University of Illinois, Chicago, USA, a PhD in phytochemistry from the University of Strathclyde, something like that. And, okay, and she also, as if that was not enough, Doc, really? Yeah. She's putting us under pressure. She also holds a Master of Business Administration from Ankosa. Dr. Tumediso oversees the provision of forensic science services throughout Botswana, covering forensic evidence analysis, crime scene investigation. Those of us who are fans of CSI, she knows better than what we see on TV. Okay, and forensic pathology services and training of law enforcement officers on the utilization of forensic sciences. Let's take a moment and let that sink. It's a woman doing all that in this country. So we are progressive in a way. These services are provided to support crime management strategies by Botswana Police Service and other law enforcement agencies. She is a member of the Southern African Regional Forensic Science Network under the Southern African Regional Police Chiefs Corporation, and represents this network as a member of the International Forensic Strategic Alliance. She is also a member of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to call to the podium Dr. Babuluki Helen Tumediso.
Thank you, Director of Ceremonies, for that very nice introduction. Ebile anong ha ke bona di panelists ke a tshoga wa itse. Ke bona hore tota we have gone far as Botswana. Let me start, ladies and gentlemen, by greeting you and recognizing the presence of the Vice Chancellor of BUAM, Professor Kethatogile Mosepele. Thank you for allowing me to say that. Recognizing also the presence of the CEO of B3, Professor Masupe. Let me recognize the presence of the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Finance and Administration, as well as the Acting Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic Affairs and Research. And also, I would like to recognize the distinguished panelists they are going to be leading discussions this evening. And also recognize your presence, ladies and gentlemen. Director of Ceremonies, it is my singular honor and privilege to officiate at the launch of the Women in Agriculture and Natural Resources public lecture and panel discussion series. I'm standing in for the Commissioner of Police, who is also a woman, Ms. Diana Marathe. She would have loved to be with us here tonight, but circumstances dictated otherwise. She, however, sends her regards. I wish to commence my remarks by thanking the University Authority for inviting Botswana Police Service to officiate this important launch. This interaction will no doubt go a long way in strengthening our strategic alliances with key partners, which is key to policing this country. I'm informed the series is aimed at showcasing the work of women in agriculture and natural resources through public education lectures and discussions on topical issues. Ladies and gentlemen, as you are in no doubt aware, The Botswana University of Agriculture and Natural Resources is endowed with world-class female scientists who are researchers and educators of note. The country is proud of you, ladies. That said, universities traditionally have been male-dominated institutions, and Buang is no exception, with very few women holding key positions, as already alluded to by the previous speaker. This scenario, ladies and gentlemen, is not unique to Buang, but is common in universities, more so in science, technology, and mathematics-based institutions, where women academics tend to be in the minority. As a case in point, Botswana established its first university 42 years ago, and to date, none of the now 4 public universities has had a Botswana woman as a substantive vice-chancellor. I hope my classmate will someday be vice-chancellor of BU. Ladies and gentlemen, it is not all doom and gloom. The narrative is changing, as women are increasingly taking up their place at the table of influence. We are seeing appointments of women at the helm of historically male-dominated professions, such as the public service sector, the security sector, the banking sector, to name just a few. My organization, I'm sure tonight I'll Botswana Police. The organization that I come from, Botswana Police Service, which is due to celebrate 140 years of existence this year, has recently witnessed the appointment of the first female police commissioner in the history of this country. We, as women police officers, are really proud to be part of this era. Bagaeso, it is evident that Buang, under the leadership of Professor Mosepele, has taken a decisive step to be a more inclusive institution, where women are not only visible, but are also equal opportunity players in the academic and administration space. The Vice-Chancellor's vision is, through this series of lectures and discussions, is to motivate girls to do science and to see that women can and do succeed in science-based professions. As a scientist, I equally wish to encourage fellow female citizens to enroll and excel in science-related academic disciplines. So that they can graduate to assume strategic positions in this country, including appointment to international assignments. Your contribution remains key to advancing the repute and developments of this beloved country. With these few words, ladies and gentlemen, please join me as I declare the Women in Agriculture and Natural Resources Lectures and Panel Discussion Series officially launched. I thank you for your attention, and may God bless this initiative. Are changing bagaetso ke mindset change, are changing dikakanyo tsa rona boitshwaro le maikutlo and contribute to Botswana's success story. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Tumediso. Whoever said there was beauty and brains didn't go together, they had not been to Buang, nor had they been to the Botswana Police Service, because pretty girls are smart too. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the moment we are all here for, I'm going to introduce the panel before we start our discussion. And for the benefit of those who are watching us online, who don't have the program, I'm going to introduce them by reading their brief bios. I'm starting on my left, immediate left, with Professor Flora Pule-Muhlenberg. Raise your hand, Flo. Professor Muhlenberg is a trained soil, water, and plant scientist with a very good background in soil chemistry and ecology flora. She graduated from the University of Botswana as a double major in chemistry and biology. She was employed by the Ministry of Agriculture in the Soil Survey Laboratory in Sibili, where she analyzed and interpreted soil tests for mapping purposes. Professor Pule-Muhlenberg graduated with a Master of Science in Soil and Water, specializing in soil chemistry from the prestigious, here we go again, okay, that in the Netherlands. As a Ministry of Agriculture employee, she worked with a team from Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, and local scientists to produce the soil map of Botswana. She joined the Botswana University of Agriculture and Natural Resources, then known as Botswana Agricultural College, or Botswana College of Agriculture, in 2001, where she taught undergraduate soil science courses and conducted research. She did her doctoral studies in soil science, specializing in soil ecology and biotechnology, specifically in nitrogen fixation. Her research efforts are directed at increasing crop yields in low fertility soils in a sustainable manner that ensures soil health and groundwater quality. She has a strong interest in finding microbes that can alleviate plant stress, be it water use or nutrition and domestication of the indigenous plants as fodder crops. She is also interested in biological remediation of polluted soil using microorganisms for scavenging potentially toxic plant metals in soils. She has an extensive experience in soil, plant, and water testing and interpretation of test results. Furthermore, she's an experienced and is proficient in landscape analysis. She is knowledgeable in measurement of N2 nitrogen fixation and water use efficiency in the field and under controlled environment. Climate change mitigation through adaptation land use is close to her heart, and she advocates for judicious use of fertilizers after soil testing. So let's go and fertilizer test. She's watching you. Without testing your soil. She doesn't like that. Okay. She has taught at Buan since 2001 and has conducted research for close to 30 years. Flora was married to the late, Jacques Muhlenberg, and they were blessed with two very handsome young men. She's also a very passionate weekend farmer. So that is Flo, as I call her, for you. And next to her is Professor Suliseng Obonya Twenyane. And there is nothing slow about her. It's just a name. A name that name doesn't define her. Professor Twenyane holds a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture from the Botswana College of Agriculture and a postgraduate diploma in education, PGDE, from the University of Botswana. She also holds a Master of Science in Horticulture from the University of Reading in the United Kingdom. Professor Twenyane graduated with a PhD in horticulture, specializing in ornamental horticulture from Whittle College at Essex University. She is the head of Department of Crop Sciences and teaches courses in horticulture or in floriculture, ornamental horticulture, and controlled environment horticulture. Her research areas are in indigenous ornamental plants, climate-smart indigenous plants, invasive alien ornamental plant species. And yeah, Professor Tshwenyane has great interest in the development and use of indigenous plants for food and ornamentation to reduce the reliance on alien plants, which can later become invasive. Professor Tshwenyane has experience across multi-sectoral departments, collaboration with international universities and national agricultural institutions and non-governmental organizations. She is an astute and innovative scientist with extensive knowledge on working with communities, partnering in projects and collaborations. Professor Tshwenyane has authored articles on water-wise gardening, contributed book chapters on climate-smart indigenous plants and indigenous ornamental plants. Prof. Tshwenyane has passion for sharing her expertise with the community as she continues to work with farmers on the selection of water-wise plants and propagation media. She continues to be actively involved in farmer groups such as Backyard Gardeners. Prof. Suliseng Ubonya Tshwenyane is married to Mr. Kaboyaone Twice Tshwenyane, and they have been blessed with 2 children. I believe he's here. Can we see the men behind the brains? So you see that it's not behind every successful man. It's behind, if we are going with behind, it will be behind every successful woman. It's a man carrying a handbag. So Professor Tshwenyane is also a passionate bird watcher and loves being out in nature. And then I move on to Mrs. Tlholego Maphane. Tlholego Maphane graduated from Murdoch University, Perth, Australia, with a double major, Bachelor of Science in Conservation Biology and Molecular Biology. She was employed by the then Botswana College of Agriculture as a technician in crop production, where she gained a lot of experience in pest identification and plant disease diagnosis over 10 years. She won the prestigious Erasmus Mundus Scholarship from the European Union to study for the European Master of Science in Nematology at Ghent University in Belgium. She's currently a lecturer in plant pathology in the Department of Crop Sciences, a duty she does diligently. Mrs. Maphane is a strong phytopathology professional with a keen interest in disease diagnosis and management. Her research efforts are directed at reducing the impact of plant pests in crop production through non-chemical methods. She has a strong interest in finding, and can you say it?
Pathogenic nematodes.
See? She's smart like that. That can alleviate reliance on pesticides. She'll tell you what she means by that complex mouthful. In managing the pests she's also interested in managing the pests of economic importance. In addition, she grew a passion for oyster mushroom production and offers it to Center for In-Service and Continuing Education course participants. Tlholego Maphane is married to Mr. Mogorosi Maphane, and they have been blessed with 2 very handsome young men. See, young men are being led by very smart ladies. So we have a very beautiful, balanced future. So those are our panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Let's give them a round of applause. Now I'm going to put on my other hat as the moderator of the panel discussion, and I'm going to the comfortable chair now. Okay, ladies. Let's start this thing. Let's do this thing. Let's show them what we are made of. So I'm going to start with you, Flo. I have a question for you to get us started. We want to know what is the role of soil in horticultural production under moisture-limited conditions. And I would like in your answer to touch on the influence of soil type on watering, soil ecosystem management. Thank you.
Thank you, Chanda. Good evening. Dumelang bathong. The soils of Botswana. You can say generally that we have two major soil types. So the Botswana as a country, we can divide it into two parts, not equal parts. The eastern part of Botswana and the western part of the country. The eastern part of the country, which represents about 30% of all soils.
Okay. Technology. Just give us a second.
Thank you. Am I audible now?
They want you to say something.
1, 2, 1, 2. Okay. So, like I was saying, the eastern part of the country, which represents about 30% of all soils, and the western part representing like 30%, 70% of the soils. The eastern part is made up of soils that are derived from rocks and minerals. So those rocks were weathered, they weathered and they became soil. Whereas the western side of the country is made up of soils that are derived from Kalahari wind deposits. So, but those are not the only two types, they are the major types. But in addition to these, we have some soils, for example, that are derived from river deposits, what we call alluvial soils. And these river deposits, we find them along rivers. Some of them are fossils, some of them are active river deposits, and the active ones, you can think of soils that are found on the floodplains of the Okavango, the Buteti, Limpopo, and the Linyanchi Chobe rivers. And then in addition to that, we have lake deposits. And here, the lake deposits, we are talking about soils around Lake Ngami, the Makgadikgadi, and the Mababe depressions. So the main difference in terms of properties of soils that are in the east or the west is soil texture. Right, the western side of the country is mostly dominated by sandy soils. And the eastern part of the country, the difference is that those soils, most of them will have slightly more clay compared to those ones that are in the western part of the country. And you can say generally soils that are found on the hard veld, the eastern side of the country, we call it the hard veld, and the western part, the sand veld. The hard veld soils have slightly more clay. And because of that clay component, they are able to store more moisture. They are able to retain nutrients. It means when you add fertilizer to them, there's somewhere where you can store this fertilizer. And they are also able to hold warmth. It means that like in winter, if your plants are growing on a siloko or on a clay soil, the chances are that they will not be as hit by frost as those that are growing on sandy soils. The sand veld soils, they obviously have a higher sand component, and it means that infiltration of water, when it rains, water passes very quickly through them. But the same goes when you are irrigating. It means that water will move very quickly. So you, as a management, then you give it in bits and pieces. The same with fertilizers. You don't add fertilizers at once, especially those ones that are very soluble. You give them in doses. You don't add, because the plant will take what it does, what it needs, and then the rest will be washed down, leached down into the soil profile. So there are also, the Kalahari sands are also low in terms of nutrients, and they also have low organic matter. But this low organic matter is general for all soils that are found in Botswana. So generally, Botswana soils, you can say they've got low organic matter, and because of this also it means that the moisture retention and the nutrients retention is a bit low. Nitrogen and phosphorus are usually also very low in our soils, so it means that, but you can't decide that it's low without you having tested your soil. You need to test your soil. The pH is often low. And then this low fertility coupled with poor water use and management can lead to low productivity of our soils. And it can lead to water scarcity. I mean, if you are not careful about how you use the water, because we know that Botswana is a dry country, most of the water is a very scarce commodity, and so it means we must conserve at all costs. And if we don't use it properly, also it can lead to water pollution and environmental degradation, which can lead to soil death. When you say soil death, often people say, but soil is not alive. Wrong. Soil is alive. Soil is a habitat for so many organisms that play crucial roles in plant growth and plant nutrition. So therefore, it means there's need for sustainable water management in our soils. And this then means it requires a number of strategies, including water conservation, pollution prevention, reuse, and ecosystem protection. And the ways in which we conserve water include rainwater harvesting, a practice that is not, that you don't see a lot of it. I don't know why we don't harvest rainwater. Using drip irrigation systems, I mean, it does conserve water because it releases small bits and pieces of water. And then pollution control, it includes treating wastewater to remove pollutants, and it also reduces the use of, I mean, it also means reducing the use of hazardous chemicals or substances, especially agrochemicals. Very often, I think I speak with authority that we don't test, we just apply the agrochemicals without necessarily having tested our soils. Most people do that. I'm not saying all farmers do that, but and then we have another problem where farmers import unregistered agrochemicals from some neighboring countries, and they use them, and some of them are obsolete chemicals that are not allowed anymore, but we see them in some people using them. And then treating and reusing water, and also collecting stormwater. All our stormwater, I think, goes to South Africa or to neighboring countries. I don't know why we are not collecting that, but that's one way that we can, boost the the water use and the efficient way of conserving water. And then we come to ecosystem protection. We need to protect our wetlands, our rivers, our boreholes, especially boreholes, because most farmers utilize, because there's hardly any surface water, most farmers use borehole water. But we don't, the way we handle our agrochemicals, it exposes us in terms of those boreholes getting polluted because the overuse of chemicals and the use of chemicals that are not even allowed. So we need to protect the ecosystem and by maintaining a good water quality, regulating flow, and also providing a habitat for aquatic life, if you are thinking of dams, this in big dams. And this brings us to the another important aspect that I cannot give this talk without touching, the issue of One Health, because all of these, they culminate into the One Health. One Health is an approach that unifies a unifying approach, integrated approach that aims to balance and optimize the health of people, animals, and ecosystems. And the ecosystems here, we refer to soil health, plant health, water health. And this approach, it recognizes the interconnectedness between humans, domestic animals, wild animals, plants, and the wild environment, that these are interconnected. The minute that you mistreat one, it's going to lead to that imbalance, and everything will culminate into the compromising the human health. So, and for us to achieve such a balance, we need to take care of necessary components that are necessary in horticultural production. We need to test our soils. And especially when you do your texture, when you know your texture, there's a lot that you can estimate or guesstimate, because once you know your texture, you can estimate how easy is it to manipulate it, what we call the workability. And you know how much moisture your soil can hold. You know if it's, when you have a little bit more clay than normal, than the sandy ones, you know that this soil can, you can grow crops, and the nutrient level is higher. You know that the soil has got a life. The diversity of the organisms that are in there is not disturbed. It's also important to know your soil pH, because your soil pH is going to indicate to you how available are the nutrients, the bioavailability of nutrients. The best pH in your soil is between 6 and 7. And 6 and 7 because it's the pH range where you don't have toxicity in terms of metals, where you have the highest availability of nutrients. I'm coming, I see that you are looking at me. And then we also need to do water testing. Why do we need to test your water? Because when you are irrigating horticultural crops or any crops, you need to know that your soil does not contain, your water does not contain salts, because you are going to turn that land into a desert if you are watering with water of poor quality. You need to test your water pH, and this is extremely important because most of the, where we come from, where the Katlang area, the water there is very high in carbonates. So it means that if you use that to mix your fertilizers, to fertigate using that water, those fertilizers, they are not going to be available to your plants. So you need to soften the water. So in most of these agricultural shops, they've got what we call buffers. Tender buff, blood buff, but those are meant to soften the water so that when you mix your water with the nutrients, the plants are going to be able to get the nutrients. And lastly, we can condition our soil so that the little water that there is able to be held, to be retained by, for instance, the use of organic matter like composted crawl manure, composted farm residues. If we incorporate them into your soil will be able to hold more moisture. And also there are industrial polymers that are there. In some countries they use them, they add them to the soil so that the soil is able to hold more moisture. You can mulch, where you put something on top of the soil so that the mulch will help to moderate the temperature. It will help to conserve moisture. It will also even help to prevent weeds, and drip irrigation, of course. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Flo. That was very informative.
Thank you.
And I was stuck on the fact that some of us do farming in the Sandveld. And I recently tested soil. I think the pH was 4 point something. So the pH was 4 point something. So, it's one of those things. But I have a couple of questions before we move on to the next presenter. You talked about the Botswana soils can be divided into west and east. The west being the Sandveld and the north, the east being the Hartveld. So my question was, so if I suspect that then there are implications of what we can grow. So does it mean that if I'm in the Sandveld, there's probably certain crops that I can grow and that I cannot grow, and similarly with the other side?
Generally, soil is one of the easiest things to manipulate, in the sense that even those ones that the Sandveld soils, remember that we can grow plants in what we call soilless media. We can grow plants in water. We can grow plants in sand, pure sand. By the way, pure sand is not soil, because it lacks other things. So the fact that you can grow things in those plants in those, or crops in those kind of conditions, it means that you can basically grow anything, even on those Sandveld soils. The difference come in, for example, if you are going to, am I still on? Yeah. If you are going to say, just to give an example, to grow, for example, potatoes in soils that are very high in clay, you can still do it, but it's going to be difficult. It means you must be using machinery, but basically, generally, yeah, you can grow things.
So I have to what? Manipulate the soil?
You must test it.
Okay.
Your low pH, you must, now that you know that the pH is low, you must lime it to bring the pH up. Okay. Yeah, but then it means you must be very careful on the type of fertilizers that you are using on that soil. You don't want fertilizers that are going to increase the acidity.
Okay, thank you. One final question before we move on. You talked about us protecting the ecosystem in terms of taking care of the wetlands, rivers, and boreholes. Particularly the boreholes, you talked about we have to be careful how we handle them. But it got me thinking, in most of our farms, we have pit latrines. Do they have any effect on the water quality, and do they meet somewhere that waste from the pit latrine and the water that we use in our farms?
Definitely. And these days, actually, it's not even, there's a standard. There's a standard for toilets. You are no longer even allowed to do soakaways. You are supposed to put a septic tank. Yeah. So it's when it's a pit latrine, it has to be lined, and you must be able to clear it after so many months. Okay. But like you are saying, you are rightly so, yes, people have pit latrines, and the area, to give an example, Yeah, you know about the Ramotswa well fields that were polluted by nitrates, and that was through pit latrines. So, but even the area, the Katling area, the water there is quite high in nitrates. It's more than, for drinking, it's more than the level that is allowed for drinking. And then you wonder where it comes from. It probably comes from both pit latrines, but also from animal waste, because there are a lot of cattle posts in those areas as well.
Okay. Thank you, Flo. As we continue, we'll probably have more questions, and I'm sure when we get to the audience,
Yeah.
they're going to ask you more questions.
Thank you.
Because when it comes to our soil and water, I think we as the general population, we don't have as much information as you have. And we are thankful that tonight you are at least opening our eyes to some of these issues that we need to be aware of. Moving on to Dr. Sonyan. Prof, I've just demoted you. How can I?
No, that's a title. Permanent.
Prof. Sonyan, she's newly minted, so that's why I forgot, but my bad. Prof. Sonyan, I want you to give us your perspective on horticultural production in Botswana, given the existing environmental conditions of high temperatures and low moisture.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. And thank you so much for coming to our public lecture. It's really good to see you all. And thank you so much, Chair, for the question. Horticulture industry in Botswana has seen a steady growth from the dominance of the beef industry. You know, as Botswana, particularly for me, I'm from the Ngamiland area, married in Kenya. You know, in Ngamiland, when you are given a plate of food, you know, you have the meat more than the starch and no vegetables. But nowadays, we've seen a change in our plate. You know, you have your starch, you have a bit of meat, and you have more vegetables. So that really tells us on the growth of the horticulture industry that we've seen in Botswana. You know, in years past, we're importing a lot of vegetables, fruits, and other ornamentals from South Africa. But now, since the importation of, the export ban, this has really helped in accelerating particularly vegetable production in Botswana. As of last year, 2003, there's been a report of 21.6% growth in the horticultural production, particularly in vegetable production. That says quite a lot. What it means is that there's job creation, because horticulture employs a lot of people. That means money in terms of the other value chain players, for example, inputs, for example, retailers, and then also the secondary processing of horticultural produce. You know, when you talk of horticulture as an industry, you may only think of the fresh or fresh table vegetables, but when you take your tomato puree, do you know how far a tomato puree comes from? As far as Italy. That's way, way far, you know. But now with this, the increase in vegetable production, and also with now the Silibapikwe vegetable processing plant, and also the citrus. Actually, in Silibapikwe, there is a tomato processing, and then there's also now the citrus processing. So I guess with time, we're going to see less of imports coming as far as all those countries to now having our local tomato puree, tomato sauce, and the orange juice. So with the vegetable import ban and other factors that accelerated the vegetable production in Botswana, we have seen a great increase in terms of smallholder farmers. This means the farmers, you know, they grow less than 5 hectares, and then there's also growth in the medium. Of course, we have also had the bigger guys in the tulip block, the Talana farms, who have always been there doing the vegetables, doing the citrus. And of late now we have the Silver Horizon in Khanzi, which is really shows the great improvement in Botswana horticultural production. So coming now to your question, Dr. Budale, about growing, the horticulture sector under our water-scarce conditions. We are a semi-arid to arid country, so water is a commodity that is very rare and very precious to us, Botswana. So that's why even our motto says Pula. And you don't just say Pula, you say Pula Aine. It has to, the water has to come down, I get it. So, as horticultural growers, what can you do to mitigate the effects of high temperature, the effects of less moisture? One is to grow under protection, okay? What type of protection? You can use net shades, you can use polytunnels, you can use greenhouse structures. With net shades, I've seen farms, Ghana with the horticulture sector. A lot of people come into the industry, skilled and unskilled, I get it. So you may find that some have information, some are still new in the industry. So as you walk along farms and visit farms, you see a lot of things, You just walk into a farm, somebody just going into a retailer, abari, get a net shade. If you don't tell them the specification, they'll give you net shade, I get it. And then you go and use it, and this is not a horticulture grade net shade. What that means is that you're not going to get the benefit that you're supposed to get from using that structure. And one of the things I've also seen as I visit farms is that even some of our professionals who know what they're doing, what they lack, particularly in terms of regulating temperature, is what you call a false ceiling. You will have your net shade. Underneath your net shade, you can have aluminum strips. Those you also buy, they are part of horticulture commodities. So what those do is that when the intensity of the temperature goes up, they close in. That's why you do the false ceiling. How they protect your crops from this high intensity of the Botswana conditions, particularly temperature. And then when the temperature goes below a set point or cooler, those will open up to allow in the light and movement of air. And again, if you still don't have those aluminum or those false ceiling, you can get what you call a saran cloth. That's a cloth now that you put at bench level. Okay, it's also used to try and reduce the intensity of heat on your plants. That also quite helps. And then we come to polytunnels. These are the structures that are also coming up a lot in farms, quarter a hectare, less than that, polytunnels. But again, one of the things that I've seen in us growers is that you also order polytunnels, the plastic film, cover. Where do you order it from? Wherever you're ordering it overseas. And again, still, if you don't give them the specification of the material you want, they'll sell you a polytunnel. Elongkore is not conducive to Botswana conditions. In less than 2 years, the UV, literally just destroy that plastic. So those who haven't bought plastic film yet, the covering, okay, you need to ask when you are ordering, specify whether you want a UV retardant, then what is able to withstand the UV. So these are from the chemical engineering part of it. Those are some of the things that are incorporated into plastic or cladding material or glazing material, as we call them, And with this zonetic covering materials, particularly zonetic plastic films, actually you can tell your supplier all the things that you want. And you find that some of the suppliers, they'll have, how about the UV retardant they'll give you? If you are growing salads, for example, the red lettuce, you want to allow UV in so that you can have more red lettuce. They'll give you that. If you want to reduce condensation, they'll give you that. It's a matter of us knowing what we want and telling them what we want. And then another thing I've realized also, because as lecturers in the university, we take students quite a lot in farms, farm visit, is also the issue of most farmers, they use polyethylene, the soft plastic. While we have rigid plastics, the polycarbonates, the soft plastic, it lasts 3 to 5 years, and then you have to replace it. Okay, while the rigid plastic, polycarbonate, okay, they'll last you 10 years. I get it. So if finance allows, my dear growers, let's go and buy the rigid plastics. They'll last you longer. They have also very good light transmission into your structure. Kana as a grower, what you want is you want more light to come into your structure. I get it. They say every 1% increase in light, 1% increase in yield. So meaning, if you shade your structure, you're going to reduce your yield. Okay, so it doesn't mean when you use plastic films, you're going to, the soft plastics, you're going to reduce your light transmission into the greenhouse. No. And then, of course, the difference between the net shades and the polytunnels and the greenhouses in terms of temperature regulation, at least with polytunnels and particularly the greenhouse, you have a better control. It's not passive. The control is not passive. It's active. You're able to allow the control of your temperatures, allow the humidity being controlled by you as a grower. So another option that also my moderator that can help if you have a polytunnel or a greenhouse is to whitewash in summer. Okay, whitewash meaning applying a white paint, latex, water soluble. Don't go and take the oil paint and we paint the structure. No, just get latex or water soluble. You paint your structure. What that means is that it reflects away a lot of light. The heat that comes into the structure. And then when winter comes, you wash that off. So that also helps. So when it comes to moisture, Prof. Mullenbeck talked about that, so I'm not going to touch much into that. You can use soil amendments, whereby when you amend your soil through media, it's able to absorb and also retain moisture. She also mentioned the you can literally incorporate some of those in the soil. So I won't touch that. So as we go out to look at issues pertaining to horticulture and Botswana conditions, one thing that I will not finish, not that I'm finishing, that I cannot stop without talking, key issue of the use of indigenous vegetables, or indigenous plants. As a nation, I think we have relegated the use of indigenous plants, both fruits and vegetables, to the rural population. Us in town, we just want to eat the nice thing, the nice exotic things. But as our country is water scarce, we have seen that indigenous vegetables, borotwe, delele, pumpkin leaves, cowpea leaves, and the cucurbits, those are able to withstand, the harsh Botswana conditions. So why are we not using them? So as policymakers, also as academicians, it is time for us, and also some of the researchers that are here, that we need to put more effort into developing our own so that we can be able to use them. I was telling Flora one time that, when you walk into a supermarket in Kenya, literally you can get equivalent of rotwe in a supermarket. So what has changed for them to come to that level? Effort has been put into developing and promoting the use of indigenous vegetables. So Lorona, as a nation, I think that's what we need to do, honestly, so that the water that we don't have, when you grow and promote indigenous vegetables, which actually some of them are even high in nutritional content than some of the exotic vegetables. So, ladies and gentlemen, another thing, before I do the conclusion, so what are the trends in horticulture? Horticulture, like I've said, even in Botswana, has an upward trend. So as growers, we need to invest in automation, for plant monitoring. You automate your watering, you automate even your pest and disease scouting. Nowadays, there are robots, there are drones that are used to be able to monitor, all your production there are even apps that you can put in your phone to help you in terms of monitoring. So that's the trend. Another trend is the use of drones for pest and disease identification and management. Okay, those drones have sensors that are able to scout around. And then another trend, which this one is not too new, hydroponics and aquaponics, whereby now the trend is we use soilless production. And then there's also, particularly for those who stay in town, urban horticulture, there's vertical farming. We know in towns we don't have space, okay? So what you do, you go up, you do vertical farming so that you can at least be able to feed the urban population. And then there's also issues of biocontrol that I'll leave to Mama Pani to discuss. And then precision agriculture, so that we don't oversupply. There's a belief, which is also wrong, that when you put too much fertilizer or too much water, you'll get more out of it. But in actual fact, sometimes you're even wasting. Again, we just heard from Prof. Mulimbeck that when you oversupply, you're actually wasting and also polluting the environment. So the trend nowadays is for us to use precision horticulture, precision techniques, so that your watering is precise, or fertilizer application is precise, so that you don't waste. When you save on that, it means saving on your money. So in conclusion now, Mabutali, is to say, climate resilient horticulture, what can you do? You need to look for varieties, plant varieties that are climate resilient, that is tolerant to heat, tolerant to drought, tolerant to pests and diseases. And then you also need to invest in weather monitoring techniques. Almost every year you hear farmers worry, I get that's quite common. Why? Because we lack this weather monitoring technology. Again, we just rely on okay, the government will announce, okay, frost is coming. Okay, frost is coming. If investment allows, it's always important that we can have weather monitoring technology so that we can have what we call early detection. And then you diversify your cropping strategy. Just don't grow one crop, whereby when the climate hits, you are gone, So I have a cousin here, I think 2 weeks of the last storm. The wife sent me pictures, their cabbage was literally damaged by hail, I think, by hail. So imagine if they had a detection technology, they would have maybe prepared for, okay, so and so the temperatures are going to dip, what strategies can we put in place so that we don't suffer loss? They suffered loss. And then another a strategy that we can use. This one I have seen in the US. I was fortunate that, through when you work in the university, sometimes you get to travel. So they call what you call a geographic expansion. For them, the horticulture is not static. They don't grow flora, have your farm in Katling, one place. So what happens, Kihori? If now the tomato was, okay, Gaborone is getting cold, I get it, but in Mau is still warm. Literally, they move. Okay, they will be leasing farms. They move their equipment, they move their stuff, they move the pack houses to Mau. When it warms up, when Mau dips, they move everything. So by so doing, they're able to have what we call year-round production. They don't rely okay, I'll have greenhouses to give me year-round production, but they literally do the geographic expansion of their system. So maybe, as a nation, we may come to that stage where you may, if I list a few farms around, that you can have, move your equipment around or move your production around. I think that actually impressed me when I realized that. So in conclusion, just to say that honestly, the horticulture industry in Botswana has seen growth and is growing. And then also this importation ban, though, politicals or whatever may seem that it was not a good strategy, but it has worked for Botswana. It has helped Botswana, wake up to go into this industry. We used just to import and import and import. So thank you very much, Madam.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prof. Chanyane. Wow, Chom. Hey, I'm going to ask you, my mother village.
Okay.
What are ornamentals? Give us examples.
Ornamentals are plants that decorate. For example, when you look at that basket full of roses, full of lilies, those are ornamental plants.
Okay.
Yes.
Now she gets it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And because you've asked me that question, through the research that we do here at Buan, our intention is that, over the years, when you look at that, at least there should be a Botswana plant in that. What we are calling potential ornamental plants. So that's what we are doing now.
Okay.
Emma.
Thank you. And you were talking about very nice things that we should have. You talked about polycarbonates that last 10 years and whitewashing and latex paint and all that. Where do we get the money to do all those things? Because it sounds interesting. We want to go there. But as a regular farmer, regular Motswana, where do we go?
Okay. Where do you go? Botswana, we are very lucky.
Chama is not enough.
Botswana, we are very lucky. Honestly, when you ask other people from other countries, they say, Botswana, we are very lucky. The government has subsidies. As we speak, there is a subsidy. I think you can accelerated horticulture, accelerated agriculture. Yes. That has some of these components, that you can apply for those subsidy to be able to go into that. Okay. I cannot go into the details of that in case it's about these that government subsidies that can help you.
Yeah. I just wanted people to, because I know someone somewhere is asking, but where do we get, because sometimes people think as universities we're out of touch, because we do research, we have access to all the resources. But I wanted you to touch on that so that they know. Okay. I think it's with NDB. It's a Botswana government product, but it's being disbursed through NDB. It's called Integrated Accelerated Subsidy. IAS. You can get your solar panels, your drips, your tunnels, and everything, even the seedlings. So, you also talked about two things that I want you to clarify for someone out there who does not understand but would like maybe to explore that. Remember, we are trying to adopt methods that use very little water. You talked about hydroponics, aquaponics. It's all French to some of us. What do you mean? Can you unpack it so that we have a picture?
Hydroponics is growing your plants not on the soil. So you have a different media. You could have water. If you are growing water, it's called water-culture. The basic water-culture area is in Komalo is normally you have an avocado seed, and then you put it in a jar of water, and then so that it gets roots. That's typically water-culture, hydroponics. And then that's the simplest how we are going to make it easy. But anyway, if you get into commercial, you can have a trough filled with water, and then you suspend a styrofoam, and then you have your plants over that tab or big tab. That's water-culture meal under hydroponics. Another method is that hydroponics, where you use what you call soilless media, meaning that you can use gravel culture, literally in the gravel we know, you use it to support your plants. But now with hydroponics is that you need to supply the nutrients. If you're growing directly on the soil, the plants will get the nutrients from the soil, plus of course you may add some. But now with hydroponics, literally you have to supply a complete set of the nutrients. And then aquaculture is a combination of the hydroponics plus the fish. So in aquaculture, what you are saying, you have your fish pond. The water and the waste that comes from the fish is the one now that is going to feed your plants. And then the water is cleaned up back into the fish. Between the fish and the plants.
Okay, thank you very much for enlightening us. I think one last nugget is that the NDB, I'm not advertising them, they're going to have to give Bua money. The NDB has a fund. I think they launched it here at our Agro Volcate Cake, whatever. Yes, it's called the Green Something Fund. And that is a large fund from NDB that funds Botswana to implement green practices in your farming. I think it includes solar panels, hydroponics and stuff. They pay 65%, you pay 35%. So explore those things as you get into horticulture and all these other things that need water. And having in mind that we are in a water-scarce country. So whatever promises to give us a yield with very little water, then let's by all means explore those things. With that, we go on to you. They call you, why do they call you Mama? Mama. Is it a nickname? Because the woman name is Toleho. Oh.
You have two names.
Okay.
You have the one that they call you with at home,
Yes.
and the one that is on the ID.
On the Oma. Okay. So let's now move on to you, because we've talked about the soil, the water, the crops that we can grow. But we know that we have pests. And like she was saying, her cousin experienced loss due to, well, that was the weather. But we know also that I can go to a certain store and say, I'm bringing you tomatoes. And then I wake up in the morning, there are no tomatoes to offer. So I want you to, I think, take us through crop protection strategies for horticultural production under these limited moisture conditions. And also give us a scenario of what happens when there's too much moisture.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Madam Moderator, and thank you, CIC, for this initiative. First and foremost, I would like to say to Botswana that we should know that plants, just like human beings, just like animals, they do get sick. I know people will be like, are you crazy? Plants get sick? But yes, they do get sick. So when you have your horticultural production, ever since the closing of borders, I've been having people coming saying, my plants are not looking good. What can be the problem? And mostly the plants will be sick. But first and foremost, before you can do anything, you have to know that your plants get sick and the media that you grow in it has to be tested to check if there's something that will make your plants sick. And I know, just like for minerals, we don't usually test soils for pathogens or insect eggs or nematodes or whatever. I know mostly when they say test your soil or test your water, what do you go for? You go for minerals. So we should also embrace the fact that the media, the soils, and the water can have pathogens or pests that need to be tested before you can start. And then you bring in some seeds. You bring seeds, usually we look at germination. We don't bear in mind that some diseases, some insects are transmitted through seeds. So I'll say it's best you prevent because prevention, like back in the days, you just say prevention is better than cure. And this was very common during the HIV, when HIV was very, very rampant. And deaths from HIV were rampant. So with plants also, prevention is better than cure. So what do we look for when we want to prevent diseases? First, we should test our water, we should test the seeds, we should test the soil. Know what you have in the soil. And then sometimes you find that, I guess in Botswana we are not doing much of that, but I guess with information and knowledge and the growth of the horticultural sector, we'll have some guidelines to do this. So because in some countries, you cannot bring in a seed. Remember, I know most we import seeds. You cannot bring in a seed or a packet of seeds if it has a particular number of weed seeds or a particular number of insect eggs or some abnormalities or some pathogens. So I guess with time we'll be fine. I have a strong belief that we'll be fine in that aspect. Then we have water scarcity. We've got different types of pests. So I know mostly when somebody says pests, what do we think of? We think of insects. But pests are not just insects. We've got viruses, we've got nematodes, we've got fungi, we've got bacteria, and we've got insects that we know as pests. So we should embrace the fact that we've got plants have all these different pests that also affect human beings and other animals. So we need to know the symptoms that come from these pests. We need to know how they affect our production. So when you do disease diagnosis, first we've got what we term effect from physiopaths. Physiopaths will be your environmental conditions. So mostly extremes of the environmental conditions, whether too low or too little, will have an impact on your plants or on your production. And then we have the pests that I talked about. And the impact on your production of interaction of the physiopaths and the pests can either be additive or they can be antagonistic. So you find that usually in a water-scarce environment, the pathogens, most of the pathogens would not be that much, will not have a lot of impact because they also need moisture for survival. But others will be very, very happy. Like we used to plant a lot of lab by the photovoltaic farm. So usually just towards harvest, you'll see the lab becoming yellow. I don't know if those who were there during the lab time before the photovoltaic farm, they can attest to that. And then we found that will happen because there was no irrigation there. There was not much of irrigation, and just towards summer, just as summer temperatures are very high, we'll have some fungal pathogens coming in and attacking that. And then we also have nematodes. I guess most of us don't know much about it, but there are just some worms that live in the soil. And these are mostly the disease from nematodes is exacerbated by drought because the nematodes are in the soil and they affect the root systems. And by affecting the root system, it means the little moisture that is there cannot be uptaken by the plants. So we'll have your stunted plants, your yellowing plants, and in some cases, I had a farmer in Ramotswa. So one day he comes to me and says, "Can I have this? My plants are just wilting. I don't know what the problem is." So he had heard about bacterial wilt, and he'll be putting in some copper oxychloride, getting in some chemicals and putting them there. And that will not work. Why? Because he did not know the problem. So it is very important to know your problem before you can try to manage it. Just like with chemicals, or minerals, you need to know your problem. I also had this other farmer, it had just rained, and after the rains, there was powder. I don't know if when we were young, my grandmother would be saying some wishes had come to pour that on on her butternuts. It's mostly prevalent on cucurbits. There will be that powder, usually just after the rains. That's powdery mildews. And that man came and he's like, I hear you were at my farm. Back in the days, we used to do a lot of farm visits. We used to do a lot of what do you call it again? Where we help the farmers. Yeah, we used to do a lot of extension. So I had gone there, I think 2 days before the rain. So I was telling the caretaker that, no, please weed this because you've got this disease on the weeds. So he was coming and saying that, I hear you came to my farm and this is the problem. I believe you are the problem. Like, no. What has happened? It's like, no, all my tomatoes have this, like there was red spider mite. So the red spider mite had come from the weed that was outside into the plant, into his tomato crop. So just, I think before the guys could weed, the red spider mite was already into the net house. So I had to go back again, very apologetically, because I didn't know what was the problem. I get there and I'm like, I actually showed him the plant that was the source. So this goes to say that weeding, like weeds, or sometimes there are alternative hosts, and sometimes there are alternate hosts. The difference here is, when there are alternative hosts, it is when the weed itself and the plant that you grow are from the same family. For example, you may have tontolwana. I don't know if you know it. So this red spider mite was on the tontolwana plant. It was outside the net house. And tontolwana and tomato are in the same family. So it meant that because they had been spraying against the red spider mite, the rains came and washed away the chemical. So before they could spray again, the red spider mite attacked. So this was a case of alternative host being the weed. And then sometimes you may have a alternate host. Alternate host, some pathogens and insects will need a plant or an organism from a different family or a totally different organism. So they will use during the time when the plant of interest is not available, they'll go on to that plant. And then when what they like comes in, they'll go back to your crop of interest. So the point here is, when you have some crops, you should treat them like your babies. So every morning I'll go into my son's room. My youngest son is 12. And I'll open the door. Are you fine? So I check if he's fine. So if you're a farmer, treat your plants as your children. Do scouting. So because when you do scouting, you are able to see the problem before it spreads out. There's this other farmer he's a South African by descent. So back in the years, I used to visit him. So the one thing I liked about him, I will sit outside with the students because he's still scouting. He'll be like, no, just stop there. He scouts and then he finds the problem, if there's a problem. And then he's like, no, don't go there. He'll quarantine his crops. You know what we do as farmers, Botswana farmers? I bring my friends. And what do I do with my friends? I'll flaunt my plants. And at that time, maybe there's just one plant with a disease. I touch it. My friend touches it. We go to other plants. We touch those plants. What have we done? We have spread the disease. So we have to be careful and treat these plants as babies. Okay, to the question of interest. I was just laying the foundation. So we've got 6 principles in crop protection. And for my students, I always tell them, we abbreviate this as REPEAT. R being for resistance. Like she said, we have to have resistant cultivars. And then we have E for exclusion. Exclusion talks to measures that keep the pathogen or the insect from introduction into a country. So I think it was in 2017, there was an outbreak of Tuta absoluta for the first time. And I remember I was coming from Lesotho with Buana. We've got this association for staff sports association from Lesotho with them in Buang. So there was this farmer. He had some potato and tomato seedlings. There was a restriction of not bringing in anything that may harbor Tuta absoluta. He was throwing a fit. He was, he was just going berserk. And I'm like, people need to know the importance of abiding to laws because it is a principle of crop protection. Probably what he had some eggs or had some any life stage of the Tuta absoluta. And the authorities had excluded importation of that. This talks to us abiding with the conditions of the import permits. Like we've got the crop protection section, that side that gives import permits. And with those import permits, they will say, for your potato, do not bring the plant if it has this, this, and that. And what do? We hide the seeds in our handbags, don't we? Yeah. That is why we've got Salvinia there in Chobe. Somebody brought it maybe as an ornamental plant. But once those things, when they come into our country, they do not have, what do you call them, the natural enemies. And when they don't have natural enemies, they'll go out of proportion, and then they become a problem to us. So here I'll ask and plead with my beautiful farmers, please let's all abide with the laws. Let's not use ungazetted points to bring in the seedlings. Sometimes I want the seedlings and I cannot get the permit. What do? I use an ungazetted point. At that point, I may be bringing in something that will make my soil dead, like Flora has said. That will kill your soil by introducing a pathogen that we cannot manage because we do not know what it is. And then we've got a protection, like Professor Tonyane has said, using those tunnels, using the greenhouses and stuff like that. And when we have that, please ensure that you have a foot bath outside. Like the Tlhakole Molomo issue, we've got that foot bath where you come in and you make sure that you don't just walk without it. And just use simple jig. Simple jig. You have it in your water, you put that at your entrance. When you go in, wash your hands. When you go out, wash your hands. So that you try to protect your plants. Plants are really real babies. And then we've got what we term therapy, which we all like. Therapy is using chemicals. Before you can use chemicals, please try to use other methods. We've got 5 other methods. This is the 6th one. Let's use it if we have failed with the other ones. Because with chemicals, they go into our water systems, they kill our soils, they do. And then lastly, let's be proactive. By being proactive is try to do all those cultural practices that will ensure that you reduce the pathogen and the pest populations. For example, simple pruning. If you don't prune your tomatoes, for example, they will be bushy, and under there you'll have high humidity, high temperature, which is being loved by a lot of pathogens, especially fungal pathogens. And then some insects will also hide under there. So simple weeding, simple cultivation, simple, all these cultural practices that are good for plant growth, let's use them. And then in water-scarce environments, it's very important to ensure that you try these methods. And then we have sometimes when it's too wet. So remember I said, when it's too dry, mostly we don't see a lot of diseases. When it's too wet, we see a lot of diseases because these pathogens, some of them are able to stay in the soil and wait for favorable conditions. Like we've got the potato cyst nematode, it can stay in the soil for at least 7 years. It stays in the soil for 7 years. If you stop growing potatoes now and then you wait for 5 years, by the time you put them again in year 5, you still have some of your potatoes having that disease. So it is important, one, when you are at the beginning and at the end of your season, try to know what you have as pathogens in your soil. And then usually when we have some leaves falling off from our plants, we just take them and compose them, and then we use that raw compost. So it's very important, like I said, scouting, so that you can see if these leaves are diseased or not. If they are diseased, try to treat them, and treat them like they were saying in my introduction. I don't like chemicals. Treat them in an ecologically friendly way, and this is just, you can have them in plastic bags, you put them outside, there in the sun, you keep watering them, and the UV rays will kill the spores. The spores are the seeds of the pathogens. So that is what we term solarization. So solarization is one of the easy and cheap ways of managing your pathogens. So in water-scarce environments, when you try to do beautiful and nice cultural practices, we try by all means to avoid the pathogens. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Plants do get sick, she says. I think what I learned, being a non-agriculture person coming into this university, I've been like a sponge trying to learn things. I attended one of the courses, I think it was vegetable production, and they were teaching about diseases, pests, and then we went on a field trip to the Glen Valley greenhouses. So when we came back, because they taught us about huilela masimu a gago, I feel like she was saying, people get into show off. Ke limile yana 5 hectares ya nyeng. People might be carrying pests you don't know. So when we got back into the bus from the greenhouses, we looked at the white coats we were wearing. We had actually small insects on our clothes. And that was like a free lesson to say what they were telling us in class, that when you bring people to your farm, they are bringing pests. And then when they leave after a few days, because you didn't, So I think what I've learned from what she said and what I experienced as a student in that vegetable production course is that I think what we are still missing as Botswana is to know that our plants need protection and that pests can be carried through clothes, through shoes, even the touching. So I've learned a lot, and I'm still going to learn, but I was wondering, you talked about nematodes that stay for 5 to 7 years in the soil. And you talked about solarization, so we can solarize the leaves that we gather from our gardens. But how do we kill nematodes naturally or chemical-free, like you said?
Thank you very much for the question. Solarization is one of the easy-to-do methods. So what, like I studied in Belgium, and I was attached in Holland. So they're big in potato production. So what they did was, in summer, they'll turn over the soil. They'll turn over the soil, cover it with plastic, and they keep watering. So after another week, they turn over the soil again. So this was meant to kill the nematode eggs and those that may be there as adults. So that's one of the easiest ways. And then another way, they used raw chicken manure. They incorporated raw chicken manure. They incorporated some cruciferous crops like the cabbage. So the residue of cabbage that remained, they chopped it and plowed it back into the soil. Then they covered like that. And I guess I've seen about 2 farmers in Khatling. I was very impressed. They did the same with their cabbage.
So what does cabbage have that kills nematodes?
It has some phytochemicals that I don't know if you have ever had a rotting cabbage. You know the smell.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that smell kills.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, thank you. I'm trying to get farmers out there to realize that we don't have to put chemicals in everything. She had talked about us testing, the importance of us testing our water and our soil. Now you brought in a third one of actually testing our seeds. And we don't do that. We didn't know that we have to test our seeds. And where do we go to get, at least we know there are labs that test soil, that test water. Where do we go to test our seeds?
Currently, we don't do that in Botswana, but we have been talking with my colleagues in the plant protection about it. Actually, they were my students. Now they are my colleagues. So I was talking to them. Actually, we were working together in January, February. So I was talking to them about that aspect, because we were like, maybe this came with the seed. And we were like, but we don't test it. I'm like, okay, but I think we should go there. So I guess the powers that be, I believe some of them are watching.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we need to because we are trying to pivot agriculture as one of the pillars of the economy. So some of those things we need to do, because sometimes you have crop failure. You don't know if they didn't germinate because they didn't get enough nutrients, or maybe there was disease.
Yeah.
So I think the ministry and whoever is involved, and Buang,
Yeah,
because we are a research center of excellence. So I think maybe the onus is upon you and the ladies that you should lead us in you don't need to wait for government, because you are the researchers. You do this thing every day and you know what is missing. So maybe let's take it as an assignment to say, but there is this gap. How do we help Botswana maximize the seeds they put in the soil and what comes out?
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, I think I have hogged the questions on my own for too long. So I want to open it up to the audience. Of course, I know they have a lot of questions. Remember, this is a soil and water scientist, so anything soil and water, even if she didn't speak about it, but you are concerned about it, you have experiences, you can ask her. She's your encyclopedia. And then the horticultural specialist, there you can ask her. And then the lady who talks about plants being sick, the plant doctor will answer you. So, questions from the audience? I see a hand back there. Yes, that's you. Do we have a microphone? Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I would like to thank the doctors for the very informative lecture they've given us. Yeah, we find it I found it very complex, a very complex field that is supposed to tell us about something very simple, something that we eat, vegetables and so on. But there's very complex science behind it. So I wonder if there is a single simplified guide that people like us who are perhaps not scientists, but who are keen in agriculture and horticulture can actually refer to and use it as a guide as we progress through this seemingly very difficult but necessary field. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe we'll take 3 questions before I allow them to answer.
Dumela, leina la me ke Joel Kokore. So ke ne go motho a ka botsa potso ya gore dumela mbetso leina la me ke Joel Kokore ke graduate ya lona te mo BCA current bua go motho na ba tla go itse gore lotlhe potso nka le botsa, what your intake about the use of influent water in relation to plant growth and biodiversity, more especially bile sector ya rona ya subsector ya rona ya horticulture. Ke a leboga.
Thank you. Last question before they respond.
Dumela. Ke ithuta go lema. Ke student sa ga Mama Fani. Ke botsa gore you spoke about the plastic for greenhouses. Can you help me with the microns, because I've got something I'm freaking out.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to allow them to answer those questions, but can you also move to this side for the next set of questions? I've seen people that side. Can ladies, I don't know who is going to take the first one.
Okay. Thank you very much for the question on a simplified guide. There is one guide called Horticultural Production in Botswana, something like that. It's produced by Department of Research, Agricultural Research, authored by Mr. Madisa. Though it's a little bit produced, I think, in the 2000s. Can't remember the exact date. But if you just Google it, Horticultural Production Manual in Botswana, it's out there. So maybe what we need is to now update it, because there are a lot of crops that have come up in the market that are missing in that manual. So that you can find. And then there are other, in the department, I think 3-4 years ago, with a few of my colleagues, we produced what we call do-it-yourself pamphlets, DIY pamphlets. So in those pamphlets, we're looking at different components of horticulture, though we didn't touch vegetable production. But I know we touched landscape, we touched grasses, we touched ornamentals, we touched pests and diseases of ornamentals. So those DIY pamphlets, what we did with a group of colleagues that produced those, we went around and put them in stores, retail stores, garden centers. But I think we still have copies, though not printed out. We can print those DIY pamphlets to distribute, and we can also maybe reproduce some those that are missing. Thank you.
I think also do the vegetable one then. You said you didn't touch vegetables.
Yes, I think for that, because it was a group of experts from different fields, so we can then rope in the vegetable people to do the vegetable one.
Okay.
It was actually a very successful project.
Thank you. Next question.
Yeah, thank you. I'll take the one from Re Kokore. The use of effluent water in horticulture. I think the key word should be treated. It has to be treated, and it's not something that is only in Botswana. Throughout the whole world, effluent water is treated, and is treated they remove the heavy metals, and they would also treat it for microorganisms. And if you go to Leah, the one thing that Leah does that probably other establishments are not doing is that after the treatment, the water is passed through UV light. And they do that to kill the microorganisms, the E. coli and whatever bad guys that might be in the water. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with using treated water if people also stick to the guidelines. Like the one that is from Glen Valley, you are not supposed to grow root crops, you are not supposed to use sprinklers, but you still see people doing that. So that's the problem. But in terms of use, if it's properly treated, there's absolutely nothing wrong in using treated sewage water or wastewater. Thank you.
Thank you. The last question?
Oh, okay. And there was one also on the thickness of plastics that are used. Exactly like what you've said, that there are a lot of variations out in the industry. So at the moment, I'm not going to allow me not to commit myself in giving you the one that you can use, but I'll send you the details so that you can be specific to the crop that you're going to grow. That will really help. And then again, for that, I can ask Prof. Wahile, who's here. He may also help me in that regard. Yeah, at least for that I can refer.
Prof. Wahile, we are making you an honorary woman.
Yes.
For a minute.
Yes. Prof, I can see you.
Yes. Can you take the microphone to Prof. Wahile?
What do you want me to say? I think minimum we should look at, I think she was talking about
the microns.
I think she was talking about the thickness. I
yes.
think it's about 200 micron. That's where you start with.
300.
But maybe while I'm still standing, let me ask my pit. I like Mama Pani. Sorry, Mama Pani. I like your contribution on the nematodes, how you can suppress or kill them in the soil. I had an opportunity to interact some few weeks ago with some farmers in Okavango, Shakawe. They are growing cucumber. You know, there's a lot of water, the soil is good, it's sand, I like sand, but they can only have their cucumber for 2 months because it gets hammered. I actually shared a video, it gets hammered by the nematodes, and I know you would agree that the nematodes is not just only in the soil, you treat the soil, but they are kind of complaining that their hair is from the water. How do you then assist? Because with the soil you have shared how they can take care of it. Can you also help? From the lady, I want it to come from the mother, not from the father. Please, with the water, it might be difficult, but try and assist there. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof.
Should I?
Yes, please do.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that question. I've had a chance also to chat with some of the Shakawe farmers, and what would work for them, what I said would work for them is for them to use some filters, because nematodes are very, very small, but if you use, actually I was suggesting muslin cloth, like letsela. So some in like I'll keep referring to Holland because that's where I got a lot of interesting experience. So what they do is they put the water through filters. So in doing that, because like they were watering potatoes and the potato cysts were like there will be I think as big as the head of this pan. So they had different filter sizes. So they filtered the water for use. So likewise with the farmers, they can also use filters. Very, very fine filter. They'll filter out the nematodes. And I also have suggested that to one farmer in Glen Valley, and he was saying, unsamaitse. Because after that, he was like, my tomatoes are doing great. The other thing is that they should know that sometimes it's okay not to follow your cropping plan. You know, the farmer that I was talking about had an agreement with the funding institution, and he was doing tomatoes. And when I came to his farm, I was like, you've got root knot nematodes. And root knot nematodes don't like maize that much. So I was suggesting that he does crop rotation. So crop rotation also can help reduce the populations. So I think it's just a matter of me really getting close to them so we monitor the situation. Thank you.
Okay. Prof. Mulenberg would like to chip in.
Yeah, no, I like what Mama Pani just said, because also when they are in the soil, one of the ways to control nematodes is through the use of compost. And the reason why it works also is for the same reasons that when you add, especially they like sandy soils, when you add crow manure or any compost, any organic matter to your soil, what you are doing is that you are reducing the size of pores. So you are actually just kicking about, because the pores, you are reducing the pore. They want large pores, but you are redistributing your pore sizes to small ones by adding organic matter. So it also works like that. And it's similar to filtering out, to filtering them out because of their size.
True.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think we had questions that side.
Good evening. My name is Kelly. Kelly, I am a wanterpreneur or wanter farmer. First of all, I would like to say the thing is called Manual for Vegetable Production in Botswana. That's the manual. Okay. Okay, sorry. Dumela ngapi? Kelly. Like I was saying, I'm a wanter farmer. That's what I call myself. No, I have questions. So I have a few comments or questions and comments. Yes.
Can we limit them to 2?
Okay.
Please.
Okay. Well, it was according to them. Can I make them 3 at least? Please?
You are twisting my arm.
I know, but can I
Yes.
twist it anyway?
Go ahead and harm me.
Thank you, my lady. Well, the first one was in relation to correction of the soil. Some farm, whatever things, even the farm magazines that I read, that honale, something called vermiculite and perlite that are used to correct soils and can also be used as a medium of production for vegetables. My interest in that was to know how one can use them, because my understanding is they do different things. Perlite allows water to run through, so if you have cotton soil, then you can use it to put particles in between the cotton soil. If you have sandy soil, vermiculite, because it absorbs water, well, the experts will advise on that. And then, in the same breath, plastiki, I was interested in kanya shade net, because 40% and then 80%, and then there are colors. There's black, green, and all the other colors that you can think of. I was wondering what would be the best in our climatic conditions, especially with the heat and also the extreme cold. And the last one, I'll combine them, these ones. It's about the indigenous and also hydroponics. And probably my issue with that is, gongwe it's important for our academics, gore ba bue le our funders, right? Because some of the programs that come out, they are so much informed. Because for the longest time, Ministry of Agriculture, in area yield less than whatever, they would refuse to fund you, or even CEDA and stuff like that. And then even hydroponics is a battle to get funded, because I think we have little knowledge on it as funders and officials, and therefore it becomes very difficult for farmers, you know, to get something like that. I know that AIS has improved a little in their new funding netland, but it's still really a very, very uphill battle. And the indigenous, a two-sorted thing, because because 1 minute we are saying, hey, you know, so or they take 2 weeks or whatever the case may be. And then the next minute, because those things, they turn out to be not so good. Because kana agona motho o reng o tsena mo business nga sa rate madi ka gore re be re utlwile madi ka go produce about 2 weeks go be go nna difficult gore o to ka lema mmidi o tsang 6 months when there's mmidi o ka tsang 2 weeks gore o le gore o rekisetsa batho. But I think go botlhokwa gore re rutane re le Batswana about the importance of these things. A lot of education.
You are now extending
I'm
the
not
time of
extending,
giving.
it's the same thing. Education,
I think we have to summarize, please.
I'm doing that. The programs are about the importance of these things.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to take 2 last questions, the very last questions. Can you, and please, I will insist on it being 1 question per individual.
Actually, mine is not a question, it's just a comment.
Great. Thank you.
My name's Nelson Kiama Mwaniki. I'm a public health specialist. I'm promoting something called agro-medicine. Agro-medicine is about farming for health, not just for feeding. Farming for health, concentrating on the high-value crops, and these which are both medicinal. And I would want to encourage the development, the growing of the ornamentals, which is what the people with the money are looking for now. I am from Kenya. I come from a background where I was coaching small-scale farmers to grow cut flowers for export to Holland. And in this country, I've worked for 20 years promoting one crop called safflower, which is both medicinal and also an ornamental. And I believe those who are following up the temolitotlo and other things here, you may have heard of safflower. So I just wanted to encourage people to go towards more of plants that will help them to get food and medicine at the same time, and to get pullers in their pockets. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Actually, Buang has a project on safflower. So this is actually, if it was an earthquake, they would say this is the epicenter of safflower. So you are preaching to the converted in this institution as far as safflower is concerned. And I think there are quite a few farmers now who are growing it, courtesy of the Buam project. I know Mamusaro, I don't know if she's here. She's one of the big ones. Yes, there she is. She's one of the big safflower farmers. So I see you, Mamusaro.
Okay.
Okay, Mabatus. Matus, yes. Okay, I see you ladies. They are doing very well. I know she is, and I don't want to mention her. But they are doing very well. So I think if you take them as examples, that research at university level, research at Buang changes lives. And when people actually embrace that, their lives change. They become icons. They are like, if you were to have a poster for Sunflower, you'd see them in the poster. So let's embrace what, I forgot what the gentleman said he was, but I know he's a gentleman who talks about Sunflower and agro-medicine. I think another plant would be what? Moringa. Yeah, so those are some of the things we should look at, not just vegetables, and there's nothing wrong with vegetables. But like he said, I like his term. I'm going to adopt it, agro-medicine. Okay. One very last, the lucky one who is going to take the very last question. And by the way, while we are having refreshments, you can always chat with the panel if you have any question that we didn't. Because if we don't, we are going to be here until morning. Very last question.
Shomari
Okay.
Kiete from DRC.
Yes.
As I saw the topics, the theme of the meeting for today, I was really excited to, to participate so that I can take some highlights about the women in agriculture, especially and resource management in Botswana, especially as I'm a women activist. I thought that I will get some information about the degree of implication of women in agriculture, unfortunately. I would like to ask, as the previous one didn't ask a question, I think I can take one more so that I can ask two questions. The first will be, what is the situation, or let me say the degree or the level of women implication in agriculture? And the second, what are the major challenges faced by women to fully participate and contribute to food production and natural resource management in Botswana? Thank you.
Thank you. Our last questions, ladies, can you answer?
I'll take the one on vermiculite and perlite, and the the one on the. I want to start with Shomari's question. Agriculture in Botswana is mostly done by women. So I don't know the percentage, but if you were to count the number of heads of people who are actually producing, small-scale farmers, those they are all mostly women. So it's not by mistake that we are here talking about agriculture. Maybe in academia, you find more men than women, but in terms of practice, it's more women than men in agriculture. And I think that's, I don't know the actual statistics, but that's the truth. So to Wanta Farmer, you see, we add perlite to clay soils. I get it. And the reason why we do that is that clay has got very fine pores. In soils, you need pores, you need voids. This is where moisture is stored. This is where moisture is transported. I think you know that after a few rainy showers, clays become waterlogged. And the reason why we add this is to make sure that we convert some of the small pores into large pores. So we do that so that there's to improve drainage, because without large pores, you get waterlogging conditions and you get a lot of toxicities that can build in there because there's no ventilation. Carbon dioxide is probably building up and the whole thing becomes anaerobic. It means that organisms that usually breathe oxygen, they die, and then you get those special ones that can get oxygen from like oxides. And that's not the normal condition. The normal condition is that you have aeration, you have ventilation, gases can move in and out. And vermiculite is a type of clay that we add to mostly to, first of all, it can be used as a plant growth medium, especially it's used mostly in greenhouses, but you can also amend sandy soils with it, but this time around you want to reduce the pores. You want the pores that are able to hold moisture, because moisture retention is in smaller pores, whereas infiltration, water transport, and is in large pores. So they do the opposite. They are used as amendments for sandy and for clay soils. Thank you.
Thank you. The other question?
Okay, thank you. I had about three from here. One is the issue of percentage shade of net shades. You know, when you look at the nets, you see that the threads are woven differently. When you just go inside the net, you get more light, okay, if the threads are lessly woven. So that means it allows more light. And then in some of the nets, the threads are tightly woven together, so that means less light in. And then that means also in the choice of crops that you're going to grow, in the net shade that allows more light in a net shade that allows less light in. You may produce seedlings or in a one that may not allowing excessive amount of light and heat in the structure. And then some, if you are growing ornamentals, particularly if you are growing ornamentals that you want long stems. Okay, so you want anything that will cause this effect called shade avoidance, okay, where it allows the stems to etiolate. And then another question you asked is about indigenous plants. That, you know, when you compare indigenous and the exotic, where you take 2 weeks or 4 weeks or basically shorter periods of time. Ghana, you know, just roses. Roses are indigenous to China. Lilies are also Asian things. For them to be here is a process of improvement, a process of breeding. So similarly with our indigenous plants, if you want to have rota in 2 weeks, it needs, you need to invest in research, you need to invest in breeding for us to reach a 2-week cycle of rota, of the lily, all that. So Tatahela, what we need is investment in the development and promotion of our indigenous plants. And then another one, you talked about hydroponics that is getting less attention from the funders. Yes, I agree with you. At times it's just that our people don't know. But if you give them information, for example, that hydroponics uses less water, it uses less fertilizers, it saves on space, eventually they'll, you know, come around. It's only that we need to give them the right information, influence the decision making, have the right people in the panel when they make decisions like that. And then, of course, the agro-medicine grower, it's important. The sunflower he's talking about is also food, vegetables. The leaves, you eat them for vegetables. The petals, you use them for medicine. And then the sunflower itself is also an ornamental. It's used as a cut flower. So you can see that a sunflower plant is almost like a complete plant. You can eat from it, get yourself treated for diabetes, and then also get feed animals the fodder, yes, and then of course you can decorate with sunflower. There was a question about the challenges faced by women. I guess each of us can touch on that. Agriculture used to be, in terms of academics, dominated by male, particularly when you look at the statistics that was given by the moderator at the beginning, that we have more male in academia, but now with time, young girls are coming up and young women are coming up into the agriculture sector. It's no longer male-dominated. One of the reasons I think it was male-dominated is our tradition, the beef industry and the male, our fathers. But in terms of production itself, statistics shows women are the one who are doing the farm work. Women are the one who produces. So that it is there. And then one of the challenges, again, as I finish, faced by women, Ghana women, to start with, I'm a mother myself, I'm a wife, and then also I'm an aunt, I'm a what? Kori, there's everything around us, I get it. So that on its own can also bring a challenge just for you to, to forge your way through, that you have other tasks that you need to fulfill and also do very well. And we also need our male counterparts to believe in us, honestly. Sometimes they say, no, a woman cannot do that, a woman can't do that. But we are equally, competent to be able to achieve and also reach levels of, success and also levels of contribution that the male counterparts do. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, just to add on that, sometimes as a woman, you have your crop, and then suddenly you fall pregnant, and that means you can't work. You can't work as much as you would. So this, and then you have 5 years of having a toddler. You cannot produce like you used to do when you're not a mother. So these are just the general challenges. But like they were saying, when I was growing up, my grandmother, the one whose crops were bewitched, she was very instrumental in field crop production, and my grandfather was into cattle. So basically, even in horticulture now, we see women in production. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. On that note, I think we have so much to talk about. This is only the first of many to come. I'm so comfortable in the chair. I forgot that I have to stand to be director of ceremonies.
Another head.
Another head. Yes, I was saying, ladies and gentlemen, let's end it there. But before we do, I would like to call on Mrs. Isabel Magetsi, the Director of Academic and Student Services, to come and give us a vote of thanks. And as is customary in Setswana, when you have a guest, you have to say thank you for coming. So she will do the honors. Mama Magetsi?
Yes, ma'am. What do I do first?
Vote of thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. At the end of it all, I want to start by recognizing and appreciating our Vice Chancellor, Professor Ketlhatlogile Mosepele. Sir, I would like to say thank you very much for recognizing us as women. You have made a deliberate, you have made it deliberate and intentional that we are recognized. And it's been about a week that we celebrated Mother's Day. And this has come at the right time. So thank you very much, Prof. We really appreciate it. Our two DVCs, thank you for standing on this evening. I know Mam Gadla is going into the bush, but you stayed on. I also want to say, Mam Gadla, as you are pronouncing your statistics about staff, I would like to say I've been pleasantly surprised for the 5 years that I've been here. We've had more or less a balance of the male and female students. Currently, we have 555 females and 563 males. So you can see that there's more or less a balance. So with us being here this evening, I guess it is to encourage and motivate us as young women that, let us also get our space in this space. I would also like to thank the ladies, our panelists. Thank you very much for free education. We really, really appreciate the
the free education. Thank you very much. And I would also like to thank the lady with many hats, the program director and the driver. For this is the director of this place that we are at. Today we come here, we find a new place. Thank you very much, together with your team and all those who made this evening what it is. We really appreciate it. I would also like to thank all of us for coming through, our students, our guests from outside this university, for just making time to come and get this free education. Thank you very much. It wouldn't have been it wouldn't have been anything if you are not here to listen in. And also those who are watching, thank you for listening in, because really our role as a university is to educate. So that is what we are doing. At the end of it all, I would also like to thank Dr. Babuluki Tumediso for starting us off. I want to believe we are going to get learned from the ladies, and with a soft touch, with a soft pink touch. We are starting it today, and we are hoping for even more. As I do that, I want to say, Mema Tumediso, here's a token of appreciation from the world. Eh? Oh, yeah. And at the end of it all, I want to say good evening to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Before you go, I think I've committed a crime against humanity, because you see this beauty. Being a public university, we couldn't afford the price. If you know Braveheart, you know they do the things, yes, and they come at a price. But they were gracious enough to give the rest of the bling from the goodness of their hearts. Wow. So let's give it up for Braveheart. Thank you. Oh, I forgot. So the front row, there is that room that you are sitting in. You can retreat to that. And then the rest of us, you and I, there is food set this side. There is enough for everyone. Please, let's go and eat and be merry before we go home. Thank you. Good night.